It's Levi Brackman here with Truth's Jewish Wisdom for today. Thank you so much for joining. Before I begin, if you like this podcast and you like the content that you hear in it, please subscribe or like it wherever you listen to it, or leave a comment. This helps other people see it and find it. Thank you so much. On to today's episode. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I've done in the past. I'm going to continue in the next episode on my series about Kabbalah. But today, I'm going to do something very special because this week marks the completion of the whole Seder Nashim for those who study Daf Yomi, studying one page of the Talmud each day. And today, we are finishing the tractate of Kiddushin, and that also finishes the entire order or Seder of Nashim, where Nashim means women. So there's the whole Seder section in the Mishnah and then in the Talmud about ideas related to women and marriage and divorce, a lot of other aspects as well, Nadarim and Nazir, about oaths and about becoming a Nazirite. This week we finished that entire portion or that entire section of the Mishnah, and the last tractate of that is Kiddushin, which relates to marriage. I've made it my tradition, mostly when we finish a tractate, for me to do a hadron on the tractate. And hadron literally means we've returned, and that is the beginning of a prayer which is said when you finish a tractate, and therefore a discussion about the tractate is also called a hadron. And the reason why it's called "we have returned" or hadron is because it's a promise that we'll come back again to read this tractate once more. So today I'm going to do a Siyum, a completion of Masechet Kiddushin, and I'm going to tie it in to today's current events of what's going on in Israel. Jewish people are under threat, not just in Israel, but across the world. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, 15% rise in anti-Semitism in America since the barbaric murder and massacre of Jews. Israel is right now fighting a war for its survival, and we pray for the safety and protection of our brethren in Israel and of Jews everywhere across the entire world. And may there be peace in the world, in Israel, in the Middle East, very, very soon. But today, we're still living in a troubled time, and one which is very worrying and concerning. We're going to therefore tie in the Hadron and Siyum of Masechet Kiddushin with what's going on today in the world. So Kiddushin is all about marriage. Now, Judaism has a very interesting concept of marriage. I might argue that Judaism pioneered the concept of marriage. And what is marriage, according to Judaism? Well, it starts off at the very beginning of the tractate, and it says that a woman is acquired in three ways. To the modern mind, feels very jarring. But if you actually start analyzing what it actually means, what are you acquiring? You're not actually acquiring the woman herself. The man doesn't own the woman. What he owns is the right to be intimate with her. It's the right to cohabit with her. So that is why it's called Kiddushin, and in the acquisition language, which is used during the ceremony of Kiddushin, the words are Harayat Mekudeshet Li, you are Mekudash to me. Mekudash means holy to me, separated to me. Kedat Moshe Israel, according to the laws of Moses in Israel. So the man is acquiring this exclusive right, this Kiddushin, that she is now separated from all other men in the world, and is Mekudash, is sanctified, is separated specifically only to this one man who makes this acquisition. And he pays something for it, and usually it's done in the form of a ring, but it can be done in the form of anything which is worth money. And through that, he acquires this right, this exclusive right to the intimacy of this woman. And at the same time, the woman says she is now becoming asur, prohibited on any other man besides for this man. So by the act of acquisition, the man is now acquiring the right to be intimate with this woman, and this woman is now voluntarily giving up the ability to be intimate with any other man, and therefore all the other men become asur, prohibited to her. That is the idea of Kiddushin. And it is really articulated very clearly in the Talmud and the tractate that we just finished studying. This has to be seen in the context of the rest of Judaism and what really Judaism did for the world. Different than most other cultures of the time, and even different to most other cultures today. And it's worth focusing on this, because this idea of being able to acquire something as one's property, that I own it and you don't own it, this is mine and not yours, is really, really important. Even though when it comes to Kiddushin, when it comes to marriage, one might say, what do you mean you own it? Well, again, you're owning this right, and the wife is voluntarily giving the man that right, and voluntarily, therefore, accepting upon herself the prohibition of being able to be intimate with all other men. And therefore, now it becomes demarcated that this woman belongs to this man. And then there are certain things that she does to show that she is now exclusive with one man. So she'll cover her hair, for example. Married women in Judaism do not go around with their hair uncovered, showing the world that I am now married and exclusive to one man. I'm not available to any other man. So if you see a woman and her hair is covered, you now know that this is demarcated. This is definitely not your property. In other words, you have no right to even start being intimate with her. No kind of flirtations are appropriate, because her intimacy is now exclusively the right of somebody else. And you should just know that and be aware of it. And therefore, there are a lot of strong sanctions that take place for a man who cohabits with a woman who's married to another man, or for a woman who's married who cohabits with a man who's not her husband. There are very strict rules associated with that. Why? Because when one makes a commitment and an acquisition takes place for that commitment, that needs to be respected. The idea of private property, this thing belongs to me and doesn't belong to somebody else, is an incredibly important concept within Judaism. As a matter of fact, the next tractate, Baba Kama, is also related to people's property. A very large part of the Talmud and Jewish law deals with what is mine and what is yours, and what happens if something comes in between, or a dispute related to that which is mine or that which is yours, and how do we mitigate and resolve those kinds of disputes, whether it's because someone damaged somebody else's, whether someone was negligent with somebody else's property, whether someone steals somebody's property, how does one acquire property, the different types of acquisitions of properties. There is discussion about all of that and laws related to that, and a lot of ink and intelligence has been used in order to be able to come to conclusions related to laws associated with people's private properties. It therefore makes perfect sense that marriage should be related to a type of ownership or property. The idea of this is mine and this is yours, and demarcating the different ownerships, is such an important idea. That there is ideas out there, especially people who are much more on the left wing, as you get closer to Marxism and then communism, there's this idea that actually no one owns any property. Who says that that belongs to you? Everything belongs to everybody. And if you think about the mindset of many people on the left from a moral perspective, it's very similar to that. The idea that, one second, why do we need to get married? I don't need this person to be exclusive to me. We can have open relationships. We can have polyamory. People don't even need to get married. They just decide to be in situationships. And these ideas that I don't need to have any kind of ownership, I don't need to have any exclusivity, and therefore this woman doesn't belong to me, this man doesn't belong to me, we all belong to each other in a communal kind of way. Judaism comes in opposition to that concept. So let's think about it. What's wrong with that concept? Why not? That sounds really nice. Everything belongs to everybody. You don't need to have mine and yours. There's no rich and there's no poor. And we don't need to demarcate property. We don't need to demarcate rights. Everyone just owns everything. And we all have communal ownership. That sounds wonderful in some sense. The problem with that is just not the way things work. That ends up in a situation where no one actually respects anyone else's properties. That's what it ends up being. It doesn't end up in a situation where everyone's truly just good friends and everyone just is able to share so nicely. What it ends up is that might makes right. It ends up in a situation where no one respects anybody else's property at all. That's how it ends up, because people are just not built that way. We want that which belongs to us. If we don't have the values of respecting the property of other people, we end up just walking all over other people and taking which belongs to them. People don't end up being magnanimous forever. What they end up doing is they end up taking that which doesn't belong to them, and they become very greedy. So unless you have these rules which say there are property rights, this belongs to this person, that belongs to that person, this person has these rights, and that person has those rights. If you don't have that, then you end up with anarchy. And not only do you end up with anarchy, but you end up with a situation where the people who are the strongest take away from the weakest. If you continue reading the tractate of Kiddushin with this in mind, you can see the theme throughout it. For example, in the last chapter of Kiddushin, called Asara Yochsin, it talks about genealogy. Who is actually considered to be properly Jewish and who is not, and how do you know if they're properly Jewish? What kind of proofs do they need to bring it to show that they are Jewish? The upshot of whether the person's Jewish or not is who they can marry and what definition their children have as part of the community, or perhaps not part of the community if it turns out they're not Jewish. So there's a very long conversation with regard to that. So one might think, well, this is really tribal. Like, as long as someone shows up and says they're Jewish, then we should accept that they're Jewish. They say they're Jewish. That is how they identify, and as such, that's what we should accept them to be. Well, if you understand Judaism, Judaism is all about property rights. What is yours and what is not yours. You can't just decide something is yours because you want it to be yours. Because if we have a world like that, then everyone can be everything. And therefore, I can take what's mine because what's yours is really mine. Related to this, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 5, Mishnah 13, says as follows. There are 4 character types among people. One who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is of average character. A person who says what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine is an ignorant person. And one who says what's mine is yours and what's yours is pious. And one who says what's yours is mine and what's mine is wicked. So the ultimate is a person who says, I'm going to share with you, but I respect your property rights. The average character says, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. I respect property rights. I'm not going to give you any of mine. But someone who says, what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine, that's ignorance. Why? Because that leads to a situation where there's anarchy. And you just can't have anarchy. Without property rights, without people respecting that what's not mine is not mine and is yours, we end up with anarchy. And we end up with the disintegration of society. And when it comes to morality and sexual morality, that is exactly what happens. So we live in a situation today in the West where people don't put the boundaries there to begin with. In many places, whatever you choose to be, you are. People have open relationships, people are getting married less and less and less, and people have situationships, and they're dating for a long time, and then they just ghost each other. There's the idea of actually being committed to each other is something which is happening less and less. I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but it's happening less and less. And that is opposed to this Judaic value that a person can acquire the exclusive right to be intimate with another person And that exclusivity has then to be respected by everybody else. And when the person gets married, it's known that I am now exclusive to this person. In Western culture, people wear rings when they get married, which is also another sense of saying, I am exclusive to this other person, and do not try to be intimate with me. I am exclusive to this person, and you need to respect that. And if you're married, you're not intimate with other people because you have given that exclusivity to your spouse. And the respecting of those boundaries is primary. The same thing is, we're talking about whether someone's Jewish or whether they're not Jewish. Well, why does that matter? If you feel Jewish, that should be good enough. Well, again, there is a difference here. And that difference is important. Either this is something which belongs to you, you're a part of the Jewish people, or you are not. And why does it matter? Because these kind of boundaries actually matter. Either this is yours, it's your portion, it's your inheritance, it's your genealogy, or it's not. You can't just claim it if it's not yours. It's not a free-for-all. There are boundaries. There are things which belong to some people and don't belong to others, and there are things which belong to other people and don't belong to those people. That's just the way it is, and those boundaries need to be respected. That is a fundamental Judaic value. Today, we live in a world where people can say, well, I'm not a woman, or I am a woman. Be a man, can be born a man, have all the biological markers of a man, but he can say he's a woman. Judaism would say, no, you can't do that, because you don't have the right to say that you're something that you're not. It's not yours. You can't just take it for yourself. You might feel you want to. There are people who feel they want to take lots of things that don't belong to them. But you can't do that because it's not yours. No matter how you feel, you can't do that. There are boundaries of what's yours and what's not yours legitimately, and those things need to be respected. So these are really important ideas found throughout Tractate Kiddushin with regard to who has the right to do what belongs to who, and when it comes to intimate relationships. And there's a very interesting idea, which sounds very strange to the modern mind, that a father has the right to marry off his daughter, and what right he has, and when does the right stop up to the age of 12, and it becomes only the daughter's right to do things. And it's very clearly demarcated of when the man has the right and when the daughter has the right. And as soon as the father stops having the right, it goes to the daughter. And now the father cannot any longer exercise the right because it's not his right anymore. So these categories and these boundaries of who has what right at what time are really important to Judaism. And they are discussed at great length. Part of the undercurrents of what's really going on in Israel, in the Middle East, relates to this fundamental worldview between a Judaic worldview of this is mine and that's yours, and we create demarcations, and another worldview which says there are no boundaries. I can just take whatever I want and might makes right. What is the Jewish claim to the land of Israel? Fundamentally, what is the Jewish claim to the land of Israel? It is that this is the promised land. It is that the maker of us all, the creator of the universe, gave the Jewish people a land. That is the greatest claim any human can make with regard to property. That the person who formed this piece of property, who created it, gave it to me, and therefore it's mine. Now, let's not get into the idea of whether you believe that God actually gave it or didn't give it. But there is no people in the world, besides the Jewish people, who make such a claim. There is no people who have a book which the vast majority of the people in the universe believe was divinely inspired and came from God, who can make a claim to say that the land they live in, their country, belongs to them because the being that created the universe gave it to them. It's a unique claim. And it's a claim which says this is mine by definition. This belongs to us. We belong, to live in this country in this piece of land because it was given to us by the being that created it. Therefore, it's ours. It's a claim of ownership. It's a claim of acquisition. It was given to us. It's the promised land. And that is the only way the Judaic worldview can have the right of something. In other words, the Judaic worldview would never be able to accept that Jews have a right to a land without them owning it in some kind of way, without them having acquired it. And therefore, because it's such an important value of ours that we don't take something which doesn't belong to us, the only way we can claim a right to a land is by saying that it was given to us. Otherwise, we can make no such claim, and we would never make any such claim on a piece of land. Because what's not ours, we do not take. Now let's think about what's going on in the world today. You have a group of people called the Palestinians. Who are the Palestinians? The Palestinians were Arabs who lived in a land which was called Palestine prior to 1948 and was administered by the British government. So it was a land called Palestine, administered by the British government, and in that land there lived different types of people. There were Jewish people who lived there, Jewish Palestinians. There were Arabs who lived there, Arab Palestinians. There were Druze Palestinians. There were all types of people who lived there. And they were all part of this land called Palestine. And then you had the formation of the State of Israel in 1948. And there were a bunch of people who said, we reject this idea that the Jews have any right to this land. They reject this claim that the Jews made that this is ours because God gave it to us. And they're entitled to reject that if they wanted to. But they don't have any other counterclaim to the land more than the Jews have counterclaim to the land. So if you want to go and say, well, 1 second, I've lived here forever. Jews have also lived here forever. So you both have claims to the land. But if you look at what the Palestinians say, and you listen to them carefully, most of them don't talk about a Palestinian state and a Jewish state. They talk about only a Palestinian state. They actually don't want the Jews to live there at all. And Hamas certainly doesn't want any of the Jews to live there. As a matter of fact, they make it very plain that their goal is to make what used to be Palestine, Judenrein, completely free of Jews, to get rid of all the Jews off the land. However they plan to do that, well, October 7th tells us how they plan to do that. They plan to massacre them all, kill us all. That's the plan. They don't have the slightest respect for this concept of ownership and acquisition. They don't say, well, let's think about this. Let's analyze. Do the Jews actually own this? Was this actually acquired by the Jews because God gave it to them? They don't care about that. They have no proof that they own it. They have no counterclaim that actually this belongs to us. Somehow they acquired it. There's no history which says that they've acquired it. No one's showing history that actually these people acquired it. The fact that they lived there for a while doesn't mean that they acquired it. Who gave it to them? So this idea that Jews own it is something that we bring proof to, and we say it was given to us. And now we own it. We acquired it. It's our property. We don't claim that another country is ours. We don't claim Jordan's ours, Iraq's ours, Iran's ours. We don't claim any of that. We just claim this little piece of land which was given to us. That's ours. And that's important for us to be able to make that claim, because in the Judaic value, if it's not owned by us, if it's not given to us, we don't own it. Whereas the people who are fighting against Israel, Hamas, they don't believe in rights. That's why they don't believe in human rights. That's why they're happy to kill people. Jews don't kill anyone because I have no right to take your life. That's not mine. Whereas they don't care about killing people. That's why Israeli soldiers, they don't rape women. I don't have a right to that woman. I haven't acquired her. I haven't acquired that right, and therefore we don't behave that way. Whereas those people will go in and they'll just take whatever they want. Because they don't believe fundamentally in this concept of this is mine and because I've acquired it. And if I haven't acquired it, it's not mine. And I don't have a right to it. They think they have a right to anything they want to because they might be stronger. And therefore they can take it. It is a clash of two cultures. One of a culture of Judaic values, which brings humanity forward, which can bring us to our full potential as humans. Because without that, we can't even begin. If I can't respect that what's mine is mine and what's not mine is not mine and I can't take it, we're going to get nowhere as humans. So that value is so fundamental. It's throughout the tractate of Kiddushin that we finished this week. And it continues in the next tractates that we're going to study. And actually it's found throughout the Seder Nashim. Pages and pages explain what you have the rights to and what you don't have the rights to, and what happens if you take something which you don't have the rights to. It's such a fundamental value. It's throughout everything in Judaism. Because it's so fundamental and important. Without it, we do not have a civilization, we do not have a society. Whereas these other people, they don't have that, and therefore they come in and can take whatever they want. They feel it's all theirs. If it means giving up Palestinian lives and thousands of them and having them all die for their cause, they don't care, because they don't care for human life. They can take whatever they want. We need to win this war for the sake of civilization. And this idea of a humanitarian pause, it's a mistake. Really what it is a pause to allow Hamas, which lacks its fundamental value, to regroup. We must not allow that to happen. It is really important that Israel, which has these fundamental values in their DNA, is able to win this war. Because this is war between darkness and light. And it comes down to this fundamental idea, which is so fundamental to the Jewish psyche and what Judaism has given the world. This has been my Hadron, my Siyum on Tractate Kiddushin, and connecting it with what's going on today. For the next episode, I'll be back to talking about the Kabbalah and the Tzimtzum. We'll be talking about getting to it for a long time. I look forward to talking about that next episode. This has been Levi Brackman with Truths, Jewish Wisdom for Today. Thanks so much again for joining, and until next time.